take a huge leap of faith and move to item 10, which is the Māori seats. Approval of consultation material, and Rose is going to stay here and be joined. Libby, oh no, I'm just catching the right page. Libby Orr and Rose Leonard will present.
Kia ora, ko Libby Orr tōku ingoa. I am Advisor Governance Policy and Programs, and I am Project Manager for Māori Seats for Auckland Council. So I'm just going to talk through some slides that relate to the consultation material itself, and then I'll hand over to Rose to finish off the presentation. So over the past few months, we've met with you several times to discuss Māori Seats for Auckland Council, beginning with 2 workshops and a report to the joint Governing Body and Independent Māori Statutory Board meeting. We introduced the decision to be made. Alongside this, we provided the feedback from Mana Whenua and Mātā Waka from the 2022 engagement on Māori representation. Through defining the scope of further work to be undertaken, that led us to your decision on the 27th of April to seek the views of Māori and the wider public. At this meeting, we received direction from you to ensure that the consultation materials included coverage of options for Māori seats, the achievability of these options in time for the 2025 local elections, and discussion on the current governance arrangements for Auckland Council. During the review stage of this process, we've workshopped the material with you earlier this month on the 7th of June. And earlier, just this week, we met with the joint GB-IMSB meeting, from which we have received some fresh feedback for your consideration and discussion today. So the report in front of you is really just seeking your approval of the consultation material in order for us to prepare for consultation in August. So I won't read through this slide in its entirety. I'm sure you're quite familiar with it by this point. But I do just want to speak to a technical issue that we're hoping to address in today's report. So we're seeking to amend Resolution C from the 27th of April GB resolution, so Resolution C on the screen up there. This amendment will allow us to consult later than the initially indicated 1 August date. So following the 27th of April GB meeting, we sought advice from our engagement specialists as to whether this consultation could join up with any other consultation matters. We were advised that it would be best if this consultation matter went out on its own, and that there was a slight delay until mid-August to ensure that we weren't overwhelming Aucklanders with consultation matters. But yeah, just a small note that this won't delay, this won't impact the overall timeline. So just to the consultation material itself, as a brief overview and reminder, the consultation material is broken into 3 main sections, plus the feedback form. So the context section aims to provide the reader with an understanding of both the decision to be made and the current governance arrangements. This section in particular was written from a civic education perspective, acknowledging the lack of understanding of council. It's a commonly cited reason for disengagement in local elections, of which this matter is directly related to. And then the main section of the material is rightly the Māori Seats for Auckland Council section, where the finer detail is explored and achievability and previously stated views on Māori Seats for Auckland Council. And then the final section is the next steps for Māori Seats, and again, this offers a good civic education opportunity. Something that has already been spoken to in today's meeting is that we have a representation review coming up, which is associated with the decision on Māori Seats for Auckland Council, and a possible reorganisation application on the horizon in 2024. So signalling these and the consultation material on Māori Seats is both appropriate and aims to connect these governance matters together for Aucklanders. So that takes us to our feedback form itself and the questions. So we did feel that it would be useful to include all 3 questions on the slide, but it does look like a bit of a wall of words. We tried to condense this down as much as possible by only including the questions themselves and the bridging paragraph between questions 1 and 2, sorry. You can find the full feedback forms on the final page of both your attachments A and B to this report. So following the GB workshop on the 7th of June, the questions on the screen have been updated to both include the last sentence of the bridging paragraph that reads, more information on the below options and their achievability for 2025 can be found in the consultation material under options for Māori seats. So this was in response to a point made that submitters may go straight to the feedback form without having read the material. So this offers a signpost as to where more information can be found. And another update is the removal of the reference to 2025 local elections from question 2, which was discussed in the GB workshop on the 7th of June. So I'll just hand over to Rose now.
Thanks, Libby. So on Monday, we met in the joint hui with the Independent Māori Statutory Board and received some updated advice and a request. We have thought about that request quite a lot, and just want to say to you that the request is essentially to remove all references to the IMSB from the consultation material. The reason that the IMSB material in the consultation documents was added was at your request at a former meeting, and we are in your hands as to whether we remove that now. This decision is yours, it's not a staff decision. But I would like to point out to you that we have some options, because looking at removing all references to the IMSB could be slightly problematic. There's a section in the consultation document that specifically talks about the IMSB as context, about the governance model of Auckland Council. There's also a section, as Libby said, that actually references the IMSB's preference for the Royal Commission model. So removing all references would be slightly problematic, we think, because we would have to essentially rewrite two sections, or we'd have to remove the IMSB section from the context, but we would have to essentially rewrite the section on the Royal Commission model, which we are happy to do. So I would say to you that there's kind of three options for you if you want to consider the request, and I do say if, that is your decision. One is to remove all reference to the IMSB in the consultation materials. Your second option is to remove some of the references to the IMSB, that being the context section, which references them in the governance model of Auckland Council. And the third option you have is just to simply add a sentence to the document saying that the IMSB, we're not seeking feedback on the IMSB. So that's how you might consider that. Just a final slide about the budget and what the engagement plan overview is. As Libby said, we're going out slightly later. It's an Auckland-wide consultation because it is a significant matter. It's not an SCP under the Act. SCP is a... Thank you. Mental block. It's not considered an SCP, it's not required to be an SCP, but we do, under our significance and engagement policy, consider this to be a significant issue for Māori and for Auckland. And it's to inform your decision that you're going to make in October about whether or not to have Māori seats. There's just a slight error in my slide there. So when you look at the what row, we're not paying for TV ads, but we're hoping to get a little bit of TV interest in this issue. But we are going to be doing the normal round of radio ads to reach out to all of our diverse communities, and we'll be using social media and media releases. The usual have your say events and online feedback, specific engagement with Māori, following up on our pre-consultation engagement that we did with Mana Whenua and Mātāwaka. There will be webinars, targeted interest group events. I think the second to last bullet point there, raising awareness amongst our most diverse groups through our community partner networking. Just to note there that we'll be really seeking to use social influences in a way that is appropriate for Auckland and de-risks any possible problems that we might have there, but really trying to reach into communities that are very difficult for us to get to vote. And this is a matter relating to voting. So we will do that in a safe way if we do proceed with that, but we're really trying to reach, in particular, rangatahi and the youth of Auckland. But also there would be hard copy consultation in libraries, as we would normally do. The budget there is, I said I'd give you an indication of that. It's around about 189 to 204. I'll do my absolute best to stay well within that or lower if I can, but you asked for an update on that, and that is actually slicing it as fine as I can based on the input that I've had from experts around Auckland Council, but that's also up to you. And just where we're at, so we've done all the planning, we've done all the preparing with you. We're really seeking your okay to go out and engage, and then we will make the decision in October. You will make that decision, and then we will close and evaluate after that and feedback to all of our submitters about what's happened. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the options is not to consult at all.
Through the chair, I would not recommend that. Under our significance and engagement policy, this is a significant issue. Also, if the Act of Parliament that is currently before the House goes through, which we are being assured that it will be a requirement to consult. Okay.
Councillor Filipaina has a question.
Thank you, Worship. I've also advised Sandra around amendment, but I'm going to ask the partai first. And Rose, in regards to removing all references from the consultation document, you said it was problematic, but the Royal Commission model and that needs to be rewritten. Can you tell me then what options would be available to assist you in rewriting? And thank you for having a cordial with you, Libby and Warwick, this morning. So would that mean just having, whether it be the chair and other councillors assisting with rewriting around the removal of the references with the Royal Commission?
Through the chair, if we were to choose to remove just some of the references, that is really us interpreting what the IMSB asked you to do. So I would seek, and I have prepared just in case, a recommendation that we would also have a delegation just to finalise off that rewrite of that section.
Chair, another partai, with the joint IMSB and governing body meeting, are you able to, because I know that I think it's confidential, but I just need clarification, are you able to advise of the result of a vote that was taken at the joint governance, joint IMSB and GB? If you're not, that's fine, because I just don't want, if you can't, you can't, but I thought I'd ask.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, Councillor Filipaina, I can't remember the numbers. You may.
No, I won't either, because I think if it was a confidential workshop, or not workshop, but a meeting within, that should be left as is. So, Your Worship, my amendment would be with B, and it would add that all references of the Independent Māori Statutory Board be removed from the consultation document. So that'll be my amendment, Your Worship, and that'll be part 2 at this stage of B. Part 1 will be that the consultation, Māori Seats consultation document be approved, and 2 would be that all references to the Independent Māori Statutory Board be removed from the consultation document. So that'll be my amendment, Chair.
Well, are you moving it? Have you got a seconder for that?
Yeah, I have a seconder, Your Worship,
Well,
Chair, and that's Councillor Leone. Yeah, look, I know that it hasn't been moved. That's why I was just asked earlier
Righto.
around
Well,
the
first
frequency,
things
so
first.
I can
Is there a
move that.
mover to accept this before we can amend it?
It's been moved and seconded.
Okay,
so
so you're
that's
moving and
been done.
seconding the thing. Okay, that's
Yep.
first of all. And then you are now moving and seconding an amendment.
No, he can't. He's got to move the whole thing now.
Hey?
So at the moment, what's happened is that there's, because this particular item hasn't been moved or seconded, we will move and second it. And the addition, as a result, will be the number 2 to B. Sandra, can you confirm that?
So can you just clarify what you're moving as what's on the screen? Are you moving A? And then
Yep,
are
so
you-
A is to go to
you're
consult,
moving A, yes?
and B is to approve the consultation material for Māori seats for Auckland Council, but then there will be an addition, which is, and the addition to that will be that all references be removed about the Independent Māori Statutory Board, and then also note that staff will report consultation feedback to the governing body. And that's in the absence of not a mover and a seconder to the officer's recommendation that we have in front of us.
So could you just have a look at what's up on the
Yep.
screen, and is that what you intend?
Yeah, I wanted possibly Sandra to put this as a second, because I have no doubt at all that there'll be people who may wish to vote against the what's in red.
So what's in red you would like as a new clause C?
Yep, okay, yep, thank you. That's easy for people who will end up voting on what's now the substantive. Councillor Leone, for me around that, just to let you know, so then people have the option that if they wish to vote against C, therefore then at least that's an option for them, but the others are process A, B and D.
Okay, I'm just taking a little bit of advice here on the processes, and I have been advised by my...
If I may speak, thank you, Councillor Filipaina. If that is to be the case, I would like to have an additional delegation added to staff, so that when we do remove all references, that we do so with your approval. So I've also drafted something if you need. So if this goes through, I would like a delegation
Yep.
to
Agree.
councillors to help us finalise that material. Otherwise, we're left interpreting what's being asked for.
Okay, so would you agree to C being and having a delegation to allow the staff to carry out that work?
Yep, definitely, Chair.
Okay, so that C is going, no, leave that back.
Yes, thank you, Sandra.
Shit, oh dear, I'm getting...
Rose, is that, it's the one
There's
that,
an E's arrived from somewhere or other. Is that,
And that's what.
that's what Rose wants to have, okay. All right, who's XX?
those are just the councillors who wish to put their name
Okay.
up, Chair. I obviously would be one of them if that goes through, as well as Councillor Leone.
Okay.
Councillor Filipaina, Councillor Newman.
Aye.
Councillor Leone.
Well, I'm struggling a bit myself here.
Chair, can I explain it so then at least the colleagues around this table and online understand what's happened?
Well, I think that
I'll leave that
it would
to
be
you.
better if E was a part of C, actually, because you only need that if C happens, is that right?
Correct.
So we'll shift E up to C, and that is the one thing that we're doing. Then we might understand it. And in order to clarify this, there's a few questions waiting around the corner, but it would appear that we might have to vote on this on a part-by-part basis, because we don't want to have one bit in there meaning that we're not going to do any consultation. So, and I'm taking some advice here from Sandra Arnott. Okay, you've got yourself shoved in here, Councillor Newman. Are you?
Yeah, God, this whole issue just goes round in circles, Worship. I'm a little unclear on process here, because I think what is trying to be achieved is the removal of all reference to the IMSB, and so, but that is all packaged into the substantive, which actually doesn't have a mover and seconder to start. I'm not sure who's moving and second. Oh, no, Philip. The problem is that we need to have a separate debate on C right now, because if C passes, I would imagine that the whole basis for the consultation is going to lose quite a lot of support around this table. My suggestion would be, it has been proposed to incorporate the C into the substantive recommendation. I think that we should have C as a separate debate, see if it passes. If it does pass, then it will have to be incorporated into the substantive, which will probably receive a lot less support than it might have otherwise received.
Well, that sounds incredibly sensible, but it's already been moved and seconded, so we can't do that. So the process has buggered us up. So what we're going to do here is I'll take a couple of questions, and then I think we'll put it bit by bit, A, B, C and D. Okay?
Well,
I believe I can do that. That's my ruling at this stage, and that will answer the questions of those on all sides of this increasingly bizarre debate. I have questions from Deputy Mayor Simpson, Councillor Baker, Councillor Watson, Councillor Darby, Uncle Tom Cobley. Righto. Oh, Councillor Lee. I'll make a comment rather than a question. All right, why not? Okay, so first cab off the rank at this stage is the Deputy Mayor.
Right, I just want to go back the truck up and go back to where we were. So can you please just confirm the process that we've been through on this issue, including past decisions, workshops and recent resolutions?
Through the Chair, I will just, if you could put the prezzo up again, please, Sandra, then we can. There have been, we've been through quite the journey, Councillor, Deputy Mayor Simpson, and there have been a lot of discussion. The consultation material you workshopped, I think the important thing is this, what we're signing off today. We're not making a decision about Māori seats today, we're signing off the consultation material. So you had an opportunity to workshop that with us fairly recently, it was a couple of weeks ago. So I'll just go back to all of the points there that Libby's put on the slide. So the GB workshop on the 15th of March and the 12th of April. We had a joint hui with the IMSB on the 20th of March. We had a governing body report on the 27th of April, where you heard the feedback from Mana Whenua Mātāwaka. We had a workshop with you on the 7th of June to go through this material that we've got in front of you today. And then we had the meeting on Monday where we received additional advice from the IMSB, and now here we are today.
Right, thank you. My second question is, can you confirm what provisions in the Local Government Act there are for provision of quality information to people who are affected by council decision making?
Kia ora, Deputy Mayor Simpson, and through the Chair. I think you might be referring to a phrase that's often used, which is reasonable access to relevant material. And that is a really important consideration for you today, councillors. In the Local Government Act, I think it's somewhere around section 82, there is a requirement that you, when you go out and consult with Aucklanders on these matters, that you provide reasonable access to the material that you feel is relevant. The material that you have in front of you today is our best efforts at trying to accommodate all of the points that you've made. But notwithstanding that, you've received additional advice from the IMSB that they would like the sections relating to them removed. So it's whether you feel that those matters are relevant.
Okay, so my last question is, without information about our current arrangements for Māori participation in governance processes, how can Aucklanders think about whether changes or additions should be made?
That's a decision for you to make. I think that not including it, we might get comments anyway. It won't stop people. But I did say to you that a third option for you is to explain the material, leave the material on the IMSB in there, but rather put a reference in the document to say that feedback is not being sought about the IMSB. That's another option for you.
Okay, I reserve my right to speak, thanks.
Sorry, I fell asleep. I was too excited by it all. Councillor Baker.
So no, look, I think my questions have been asked by Councillor Newman and the Deputy Mayor. I'll just reserve my right to speak because I'm reasonably uncomfortable and fairly disappointed in the approach.
Councillor Watson then.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and I guess my question may be rendered redundant if the resolutions go through, but I just really picking up on the comment about the civics education perspective, which I think is a very good presentation, and that's really important. We know in respect of the Auckland Council, local boards, councillors, many people in the public, even quite educated and interested people, have little idea how this council runs. They don't know the difference between a local board, a councillor. They wouldn't even know there's an IMSB, to be honest. They wouldn't have a clue in most cases. So I guess out of that, desire, and it's a very laudable desire to kind of educate people a bit, because it's the level of awareness is woeful. I'm just wondering, when it comes to the IMSB, notwithstanding the resolutions out there, why haven't we identified that in the normal course of events there are 9 people on the IMSB, 2 of whom serve on committees other than the GB with full voting rights? So in terms of that educative function, I'm really curious to know why that quite important detail just hasn't been mentioned at all. That's kind of question 1.
Thank you. So in the section titled the Independent Māori Statutory Board, which is on page 5 and 6 of the full consultation document, which is, I think, attachment B, it does cover that it is an independent statutory board set up by law, and that it goes into a bit of an explanation about it, but it does actually touch on the fact that IMSB do participate in council decisions on council committees. So that is in there at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I guess, my point remains in terms of educating and accurately reflecting the degree of participation. Numbers are important. This is all about numbers, 1 person or 2 people or 20 people. This is, deals with 9 people, and 2 of whom are on committee. So I've made that point. It runs contrary to what's up there, but I think it's an important one. My second question goes to the questionnaire itself, and I asked this in light of some of the responses back through the annual plan, where I'm sure people kind of respond in good faith and then can find that that's out of scope. So I just want to check what's in scope and not in scope here as it goes to question 2. And question 2 says, if Auckland Council decides to introduce Maori seats, which model would you prefer? And it goes down there, the bottom ones, I see a different model. So am I right in assuming, you know, a different model, people can come up with their own kind of view that might say, you know, something along, well, could be anything, but a model that might say, you know, include IMSB members on the governing body, for instance. So it's a different model. Does that meet the criteria there of introduced Maori seats, or is that going to be cut out if someone comes up with something that's not strictly related to Maori seats, but is a different model on what already exists?
Thank you for your question, Councillor, and through the chair, best engagement practice and feedback form is to leave the opportunity for submitters to give us their views and to not hinder them overly, but to still give you enough information about what people think. That's the reason we have left I think you might be referring to the Royal Commission model and any other model box. Throughout our pre-engagement consultation pre-consultation engagement with mana whenua and mātāwaka, they did have views on what they think the preferred long-term model was, and they gave us their views. And so this is keeping faith with that considerable amount of work that we did and they did, and so that you can have a view, continue to have a view and visibility of what they are seeking, both now and in the longer term.
So I guess the difference here, this is going out to all of Auckland, and we can't predict what all the other people have, and I guess certainly that last box reinforces what you say there. Is there anything else you'd like the Mayor and councillors to consider? So for if people come up with, apparently, maybe kind of left-wing ideas of, create a local board of Maori representation and appoint 2 people instead of this or that, any variations thereof. That'll all be legitimate feedback which we can consider.
Through the chair, yes, and I'll do my best to summarise it, but I'll call out any that are of particular interest.
Good questions, those ones. Try and limit the amount of things that I've got to consider when you finish this. Councillor Darby, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Rose, just on that core question, I'm just mindful of when people open up their pack, and most people don't read too long. They're going to look at what's at the top. And the question is, do you think Auckland Council should introduce Māori seats, etc.? It sort of doesn't say the why. It doesn't to I don't know, to improve representation, or is there merit in? I know we can't go too far, otherwise you're writing a big paragraph and then you lost them. But is there merit in the very core question of highlighting the why?
Great question, and thank you, Councillor Darby. Libby, we just, because there was a wall of words there, there's a preamble sentence which Libby can read to you now before we actually do ask the questions. So it's just for the interest of that slide, we didn't put the little preamble sentence in there. So if you want Libby to read it, she can.
Oh no, look, if you think that sentence really covers it and it introduces the respondent to, in an informed way, I'm comfortable with that. And just, do you think people know what a seat is? Often, I've never considered myself holding a seat at Auckland Council, but that's something that we talk about for the Parliament, and people understand that. Are you confident that people understand what that is?
Through the chair, I am. We have had many discussions as a team about whether to use the word seats or wards. Around the rest of the motu, most people talk about Māori wards, and that's how people think of it. But we had a slightly broader discussion with you initially, and if you think about the Royal Commission model, they're not wards. They wouldn't be ward, or that one seat wouldn't be a ward. So we tried to broaden it out, but in the document, Libby has explained actually what we're talking about, I think, pretty well. Yeah.
Councillor Newman, please.
No, mine's comment. I've had my name removed from C.
Councillor Filippone asking a question? Or
Yes, I am, Chair. Rose, that option that's currently there, can you tell me, with the names of the councillors that are currently there, they will be assisting you in regards to any of the changes when if it goes through, to the Royal Commission that you mentioned? That's the first one?
Yes, thank you. That's what I was asking for, because as I said, otherwise we're left interpreting what it is you want. And I want to be very sure that what we're putting out there is what's been agreed to.
Thank you. Also, Rose, and I don't know whether Warwick may have been around in 2015 and 2017, because or yourself, Libby. Yeah. So in those discussions, can you confirm that the debate that happened in 2015 and 2017 ended up ensuring that the Independent Māori Statutory Board and their role had nothing to do with the Māori seats? I've also got the recommendation here from 2017 that was moved by myself and ex-councillor Collins. But can you remember the debate in regards to the Independent Māori Statutory Board and the Māori seats at the time?
I can't remember all of the debate. You might be able to inform me, but I think in 2017 we really didn't have the opportunity to change the number of councillor seats, which we're about to have, all going well. So I was not, and I was also not a member of the Governance Division in 2015. I was a member of the Finance Division.
Would you then be surprised if I said that the debate in 2015 and subsequently in 2017, that there was assurance during the debate, and for those that were around that table at the time, that the Independent Māori Statutory Board is separate because they were set up through the Act that set up Tāmaki Makaurau, and that had nothing to do with any of the Māori seat or the debate and consultation that went out for Māori seats?
I can't confirm that, but what you're saying is correct. The Independent Māori Statutory Board is just that, independent, and it's statutorily established. It is a different issue. If you want me to bring Warwick to the table through the chair, I will, but that's at your pleasure.
Where are you
That'd
going
be
with this,
okay.
councillor? Because basically, you want people to know that it's separate, but we're not allowed to tell anybody that it even exists. I don't know how we can have consultation on this without letting people know there is an independent Maori statute. You may as well have a move to remove the word Maori from it and see where we go there.
Maybe I can enlighten you, Your Worship, because you've asked me the question. Maybe I can enlighten you. So, Chair, this is the enlightenment. What has happened is that the Māori Statutory Board, as you know, with all the discussions with the old TLAs, that it was decided by Rodney Hyde, the Minister at the time.
I know the rules.
Well, can I finish, please, Chair? So what had happened was the Independent Māori Statutory Board was set up, and they had nothing to do with any Māori representation. It was set up to make Auckland Council accountable in regards to the Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We are now in a situation where I believe that we are confusing our community because the Independent Māori Statutory Board has nothing to do with the Māori seats. They are not going to be a replacement. They will not be unless there's a legislative change. So that's why this is up here in regards to the removing of the reference to the Independent Māori Statutory Board, because they had nothing to do. It was confirmed in 2015. It was confirmed in 2017. That's why I have then moved that, and I will explain why I've gone the way that I have after the questions that you have, Your Worship, and others.
Councillor Leone, please. No. Councillor Turner, please.
On that first, there was a slide there about our consultation document, and you said there'd been a sentence left off it. a preamble or something.
Through the chair, just in the interest of not having a wall of word for that slide, I didn't include the preamble sentence. I just put, Libby put up the questions. But there is a preamble sentence for the reader on the form that introduces the topic because you asked us to. It just introduces the topic. In the event that the only thing that some people might pick up is actually the form.
So that, what I see there is going to be different when it goes out to the public. There's going to
Through
be,
the chair, it's in your attachments A and B.
yeah, I try and look.
I can read it to
no,
you.
I'm not trying to read it. All I'm trying to say is, we don't want to leave anything out. You know, I'm confused, and I'm trying my hardest. If I'm confused, the public's confused. And I think, why can't we just simply say the Maori Statutory Board exists, it's statutorily separate to the council, it does not have full recognition on the council table, we are not asking you to submit on this. Why can't we just say straightforward, simple stuff that the public won't read anything into, other than, oh yeah, that, you know.
I think she's
Chair,
tried to
that's
say
what I
that
think we
actually,
have done.
but she's not allowed to according to this amendment, so.
The material that you have in front of you is the material we workshopped with you, with the amendments that you asked us to put in. And we're doing our utmost to include the things that you want and make it clear for Aucklanders.
No, aren't you asking me to vote to take something out?
Councillor Filipina is asking. I was just clarifying that I'm not asking you to take anything out.
Councillor Bartley, please.
Thank you. I was just trying to figure out how we could do this without the public's feedback being coloured by them thinking that there's already Māori representation catered for by the IMSB. But I think I'll leave it. I think Councillor Filipina was going there with his questioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Councillor Walker.
Sure. So I just wanted to pick up on that test that you mentioned, just to make it clear for Aucklanders. So my question goes to the consultation documentation where we talk about and in particular the IMSB, participate in decision making. I mean, bluntly, they vote around the table. And most people understand that. They understand what a vote is. So we would have a situation where around the table, a Māori member occupying a seat would be voting. Equally, IMSB members would be voting. So can we express that? I'm assuming that we can express that in Māori as well as English, and that we would be doing both. So we need to do a proper job of that. Equally, there are important concepts that need to be mentioned around the IMSB that are different to the councillors. So the councillors, for example, are voted on democratically by people in the community. The IMSB members are not. They apparently bear no accountability. There's a body that's set up that disappears into the ether immediately after the elections that appoints them, but has no other duty aside from that. So there is no accountability, though there is authority. And that is different to both the councillors and the local board members. Similarly, I'm assuming that in respect of a Māori member from a ward, there will be some accountability there because there will be an electorate that will be voting that person. So is it possible to express these things simply and to also express how things actually work here? As Councillor Watson and others have mentioned, there are two members. The significance of those two members on a committee as it goes to the voting and the like. That's what all of these things come down to. So it's a lot more than just participation. And if I go back to the point that Councillor Watson was making earlier around civic education, how can we expect people to participate civically if they don't understand how it works? And we're not even informing them. So I really would ask the question, why can we not present fulsome information as to how it works? Thank you.
Well, you'll get the opportunity to debate on that, to vote on that shortly. And Councillor Fletcher.
My contribution to this is, given that we seem to have suspended standing orders in terms of moving this with the amendment in it, I'm going to move that the question be put. I'm being naughty because I know that we haven't had 3 speakers for and 3 against, and we're dealing with questions, but I think we're testing the patience of Rose in the questions that we're posing to her, and we do seem to be going round and round in circles, Your Worship, and I look for your guidance on bringing this matter into a conclusion.
Okay, we'll go to comments. Thank you. That was a question as how I'm going to do this. Well, I'm going round and round in circles, and I'm going to try and stop it. So we're on to comments now, and the first comment, it comes from Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just to give you some context around how this has happened, is that the officer's recommendation that was on the governing body agenda wasn't moved or seconded. Councillor Leone and I moved it and she seconded it. It then became the substantive. That was the only way that I could have at least put my recommendation C. That's in regards to the standing orders and the process. That's why it then became the substantive. I then wanted to hear through all the questions of the colleagues that I have around this table, I wanted to hear what their thoughts are. I have always supported Māori seats, but I've always supported from 2010, November of 2010, the Independent Māori Statutory Board, when they had their mihi whakatau, their pōwhiri, when they first started. I have supported them through the legislation. This is why that was the only way through standing orders for me to get this on there. I have now listened to everybody around this table, those who have spoken with their questions. And Chair, through you and through Sandra, and I've spoken to Councillor Leone, and also taken on board the discussion that I had with Rose, Warwick and Libby this morning. And with the committee's permission, I would like to change C. And that change is for the option 3 that Rose gave us, because I needed to make sure, firstly, that the Independent Māori Statutory Board and the conversations we had at the governing body in 2015 and 2017, it was clear in both those governing body meetings that the Independent Māori Statutory Board had nothing to do with Māori representation or Māori seats. I have now listened to the people around this table and spoken with Councillor Leone, and would like to change the recommendation to just that the Independent Māori Statutory Board, as per Rose's suggestion, which is suggestion 3, that it is out of scope. That way, at least by hearing the people that have mentioned their questions and also comments, hopefully that will go through. There's no reference and no need for us to have a group of councillors together. That will be removed. But it will be, as Rose has indicated, not only here but this morning, it is out of scope. And that is what I'm seeking, if it's okay again with Councillor Leone, is that it is out of scope. And I just want to acknowledge, because I've had a discussion for the last few days with the Independent Māori Statutory Board Chair, who was on, not online in our particular meeting, but listening to just in regards to the advocacy. So, Chair, that is what the request. There's a new C now, and that note this considers not seeking feedback on the Independent Māori Statutory Board, but as Rose has said, and Rose, thank you to you, Libby and Warwick, but Rose, if there's anything that will make it a bit clearer than what I'm seeing now, please, if that's okay with you, Chair, and whether it be out of scope or if this is okay. I have listened to people around this table. This is why I've changed it. So I don't know whether, Rose, this is something that is suitable for us to move forward on this.
Okay, thank you for that. Now we're round C. From my point of view, I don't have any great problem with that. It still allows the consultation to explain what the Maori Statutory Board is, and it's not seeking feedback on that, but under the other bit that they can raise other things that probably will come in here. So,
So can I get a, sorry, can I just clarify that what you said is absolutely correct? So
Aye.
this, what you just said then, this doesn't, because I think an important point for me is, does this change to mean that we're explaining in the material that we have an IMSB, what their role is and what they do, but it is not seeking feedback on them because it's not what this is about?
It's out of scope.
Yeah.
that's right.
And that's
Is that correct?
and that's what Rose said as the third option she put. She put 3 options. I preferred the first one, but now this is out of scope. Definitely, it is clear for our community when it goes out for consultation, as Rose suggested.
I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, I'll just get Rose. Would you mind coming back, Rose? This is your wording, but this seems to represent what you're saying. My understanding, and same with the question from the Deputy Mayor, is that we will still, in the consultation, explain that there is an IMSB and what it does, and it just says that we're not directly seeking feedback on their IMSB. Okay.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that wording, and I have sought advice on it. Just one point of clarification, I'm not saying that it is not, that the IMSB is not in scope. What that resolution says is this consultation is not seeking feedback.
But people will still be able to read the whole thing and understand that there is an IMSB and somewhere lurking in the background. That's good. I think that might just about do it. And I've got a couple of questions. I mean, desperately needed questions. Councillor Newman, do you know? You've desperately been answered. We're doing comments in here. Councillor Walker, your last question.
Sure.
Councillor Lee, I can't stop him there. No, that's all right. You're in comments. Councillor Walker, have you got a comment?
Comments.
Well, if it's a comment, fundamentally the context that we're talking about is representation. Representation includes the IMSB because they have a vote. We don't quite know who they represent, but nevertheless, they have a vote. So from my perspective, it is in scope because it is an option that is available. And it is an option that should be considered as part of the overall situation, because what you're talking about fundamentally is the people around the table who are voting. And if people cannot reasonably expect to be consulted about around that,
correct,
then I think the consultation is a farce. A reasonable person, and this is a test in law, would expect to be able to make a comment around that, and they would also expect that there would be some substance, some consideration around it as part of decision making. Otherwise, a number of people might think, again, given that the process would otherwise be a farce, that what's the point? And I think there is already a crisis of confidence in government in this institution of New Zealand, let alone making it worse around the council. So I think it should be in scope. I think it should be informed so that people can engage, spelled E-N. Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, just a comment, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm the only person around the table that served in a council with Maori seats, elected Maori seats. And my colleague was the late Mr. late Mr Taho Cooper, the member for Western Māori, ARC member for Western Māori, and the late Waireti Norman, the ARC member for Northern Māori. My concern here is that in the wording of the consultation document, I get the impression is given, put it that way, that the Auckland Council does not have elected Māori seats. And that gives the impression that we are a standard monocultural, insensitive to Māori issues organisation, and nothing could be further from the truth. I said at the outset that I was unique in having served with elected Māori members, but of course, when it comes to Māori seats are not unique to the Auckland Council. We've had the Independent Māori Statutory Board represented on all our committees where the real work is done from the beginning. Working parties, subcommittees, you name it, the Independent Māori Statutory Board and their voice is heard at all times, and sometimes decisively on contentious issues which have been, narrowly split. At times, the votes and the seats, if you like, unelected, of the Independent Māori Statutory Board have been decisive in policy decisions in this council. So I don't get that impression from the consultation material at all. And in terms of, I'm glad my colleague Councillor Filipaina has amended his amendment, because in terms of not including information, that really conflicts with Section 82 and Section 82AA of the Local Government Act, principles of consultation. The public are entitled to have all the necessary information they need to make an informed decision. I think Councillor Filipaina is quite right, though, when he argues that the Independent Māori Statutory Board is not representative. But that was a decision preferred by the Mana Whenua Forum, as it was, and I was present when they briefed, or they made their points to the Minister of Local Government in 2009 that their preference was for this sort of unique body rather than standard old democratic elected seats. And so the Independent Māori Statutory Board is not representative. We've only heard that fairly recently. They themselves say it, and they're quite right. The Act says that the board is truly independent. It's independent of the Auckland Council and the board's members and the selection body and the Mana Whenua groups represented on the selection body. They are truly independent and therefore not accountable. They are not required to accept direction from any person, says the Act. Now that is absolutely unique, I would say, not just in New Zealand, but in any Western democratic country. So the fact is, they are not representative, but they do have seats, and that's the key thing, albeit not on the governing body, but just about on everything else, yes. And so I think the consultation material does this council a disservice in that it would appear that this council has not given enough emphasis or gives insufficient emphasis to Māori outcomes when we know hundreds of millions of dollars and enormous influence is given to those who from time to time do say they represent Mana Whenua or Māori in general. And so I would really ask that the true story, the true picture, the balanced picture rather complicated as it is, through no fault of our own, goes out to the public. So when they ask to whether to vote for Maori seats, they should realise that there are seats already in here, but they're not democratic. And so the question is, do you want democratic Maori seats? That's a key question. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Excellent speech, thank you. Absolutely excellent. Councillor Hills, Councillor Baker, Councillor Leone, and then we might actually have a vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I just brief, we've already made this decision unanimously 2 months ago. This is just approving the consultation document. It was made clear 2 months ago when we made the decision that IMSB was out of scope, and I guess Councillor Filipainen was wanting to reinforce that because it is set by legislation. We asked many questions about it 2 months ago. This is about going out to consultation on Māori seats, which is very different to the Independent Māori Statutory Board. And although we choose to have them on committees, that is not in any legislation, and they did not participate in the governing body or our financial decisions that we recently just did. So I guess reminding the table, this is not making the decision, this is not changing the decision we made 2 months ago. This is reinforcing a consultation document based on the unanimous decision we made 2 months ago. So I think we've got a bit tied up in what it is, but we were very clear 2 months ago that the Independent Māori Statutory Board would be mentioned as context, but it would not be part of the consultation because we do not have decision making over it, and it needs to be considered separately by a different body, which is the government. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Baker.
Yes, I mean, I'm pretty keen to get back to the original resolution, to be fair, and I certainly wouldn't be supporting the amendment that's up there now. And I guess I pick up on the fact that, you know, and it's been said a lot about how do we inform and educate, I guess, the people that we represent. And the Deputy Mayor talked about it previously, and whilst we can all sit there and probably, I think probably 80% of us in this room would know exactly what the IMSB do, I think if you went out to the community, they would sit there and probably 99.9% of the community, and in particular the Māori community, wouldn't have a clue that there is a voice around this table in whatever form. And so when I read the consultation document and I see the explanation, I see that as being absolutely crystal clear. I'm really nervous about the wording and what that means, and not seeking feedback, because I actually want to hear, because we sat here and we have sat here, and just previously this morning we talked about how we approved a reorganisation and a rearrangement discussion. But we're not saying now, we're saying no, we can look at everything in council, but this one small bit should not be discussed and should not be discussed with our community, and I do not agree with that. We have sat here and talked about, as we look forward, that everything is on the table for discussion as we move forward, but we're sitting here now saying everything but one little piece. And I just do not agree with that. I think if we're having a discussion, we have a full discussion with our community. There is nothing to be fearful of, because we may get information back saying we believe that the IMSB is doing a magnificent job, and at least we know that. We might get something else. It appears to me that we are just trying to shy away from something that we should not be shying away from, that we should be discussing, because it is what is discussed in general terms in the community probably every day. And so we need to move forward on this. We need to be leaders in this. We need to be going out with consultation material that is full, that explains the entire thing. And I think by promoting, don't give us any feedback on the IMSB, defeats the purpose in my view. So I think I support the original resolution, and we'll be voting against the amendment.
Clarity at last. Councillor Leone.
Look, I think that we have actually come to a good
resolution by changing that. And, you know, as I've brought up at a number of our meetings beforehand, I think the issue around separating out the IMSB and Māori wards are totally different things. And if that hasn't been achieved in the future, that Aucklanders don't understand that, then I feel that that's something that Auckland Council is lacking. And we should be reviewing that in a separate space, not in this space to be talking about Māori wards. I mean, obviously, if there are issues there, I'm concerned about that too, with the way that IMSB is working, and that's a totally different conversation though. We're not here to talk about that. The consultation document is about talking to Aucklanders about having Māori wards here at governing body. And the concern that I really have is that if we start to mix those two things in, it could, you know, if people are already confused about what those two things are, you're trying to do that all in one go. I don't believe that's the right time to do it. I just want to go back to reiterating about Māori wards and Māori representation, and as I've said a number of times, you know, I'm the first Wahine Māori to be on the governing board since the Super City. I'm the first mana whenua person not represented under a Māori ward, but done through a democratic process. And I just think we need to get on with this. We just, you know, we're lagging behind with the rest of the country, and we can't be held up with a little bit of wording of a consultation document. We just need to agree on this. I agree talking about things around IMSB and all those other things need to be done in a separate forum, but let's get the consultation document out and let's get this done.
Councillor Ferry, please.
Kia ora. I largely agreed with what Councillor Leone just said. Just to briefly add, it's been said that there is a voice and that the IMSB is that voice. They are not at this table. So how can there be an IMSB voice at this table, even if it was representation as opposed to accountability? This discussion is about a voice at this table at the governing body, and that is the most important decision-making process we have as council, and currently Māori do not have fair representation, so I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, I guess, Mayor, I have a unique perspective of this because I was a minister in the Cabinet Committee that processed this legislation. I sat very next to Rodney Hyde on a number of occasions, and Dame Tariana Turia and Peter Sharples had a major set of input into this legislation. And I can tell you, because I went back to my notes the other night from my cabinet books, that at that time this was very much about making sure Māori's voice was being heard at the Auckland Council, and that it had to be into the legislation in order for that voice to be heard. Now, I think Councillor Baker summarised it brilliantly, and I think it's pretty clear to most people here. The IMSB attend a number of decision-making committees, and as I think Councillor Lee said, have actually had the decisive vote to vote something down, even though the council might have been split. So I think the most important thing is to inform the public what is there, and then they can make a decision as to whether that's enough, or whether it should be an elected representation, or whether it should be both. Now, quite interesting the other night when we did lose a vote based on the decisive vote of the IMSB, I got home and I said to my wife, who's pretty active in politics, oh, we lost the vote today because the IMSB vote went the other way. And she said, what's that? And I said, it's Independent Māori Statutory Board. She said, what's that? And I said, there is a board of people representing the Maori's view of things that gets brought to committees. She said, what, Auckland Council has it? I don't think she had Maori seats. I said, no, but there's an IMSB. So that night when we went over to drinks at the tennis club, I asked around and nobody knew what an IMSB was. They did not know what it was. And when I told them, they said, oh, I didn't think council had that. So if people are going to make an informed decision when they put the consultation process together, they have to know that at least we've got that. And if that's not enough for them, then they'll have the ability to say, no, I want it stronger than that. There should be seats as well. Or they might come back and say there should be seats instead. or they might come back and say, it's actually fine the way it is. But to hide it and not put it out so that people understand, I just think is just the worst thing we could be doing politically.
Well, we know where you stand. That's very excellent. And we've got Councillor Newman and a clarification from Councillor
Mr Mayor,
Really? A
I think
clarification?
a
Is
lot
this
of
not
misunderstanding could be cleared up if it was made clear that the publicity will talk about Māori seats on the Auckland Council governing body, not on Auckland Council, because Auckland Council has had Māori seats from the beginning for most of its work. It's the governing body is the key issue.
Oh, I think that's true. But no amount of clarification will clarify anything here. Councillor Newman, are you still wanting to make a brilliant speech to enlighten us?
Well, I'm not sure if it's brilliant, but I just wanted to ask a process matter here. So I don't support the addition in red. So how do I record my opposition to the addition in red?
I think possibly the safest thing for me to do, given the way this is, that we'll do a vote on A by vote, and a vote on B, and a vote on C. And it may well be that on B, if someone will call for whatever it is that they call for.
Well, I mean, an option A would be the original. The option B on B would be the original plus the addition in red. Seems to me that if the original B is supported by the majority, then that's fine. And if the new B, which is the original plus the stuff in red, is adopted, well, that's a different matter. But we need to get some clarity on this.
Well, I'll try and do this by going through A, B and C, and if B passes, that's all done. If B doesn't, we'll go for B minus, which is okay. So I'm going to try that. I mean, I'm somewhat hampered by the rules here, and so I'm going to try. I'm going now. It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to put. Councillor Filipaina has reserved his ability to respond, and I'm quite happy to hear that.
Thank you, Chair.
Just before you do that, you can also comment on what I was going to do, and so you can include that and give me some advice. I'm going to ask if A, on the words, aye or not, B, and if someone wants, I think we have to have a division on B, or would be called, and on C, I'll see how we go on that as well. That's what I'm intending to do. Now I'm going to offer you your opportunity to reply to the debate, seeing as you were the proposer of this. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to acknowledge everybody's sort of whakaro, but Councillor Lee, you and Councillor Hills, as well as Councillor Ferry, basically summed it all up for me, and also what Councillor Baker had said, and that is, this is two separate things. We're going out for Māori seats. It's not going out to see what the Independent Māori Statutory Board should be here. And you're right, this is the reason why I wanted to make sure that this is not around the Independent Māori Statutory Board. This is around Māori representation on the governing body. And that's what's confusing with what I've heard already with people around this particular table. And that's the reason why I wanted to make sure that there is a separation with this. And this is around Māori seats and representation on the governing body. So, Chair, that's really all I had to say. And it made it clear when Councillor Baker ended up saying what he said, that why that red is so important. It is just only on Māori seats and representation around the governing body, which there is none from Independent Māori Statutory Board. Kia ora.
Mayor, Mr Mayor.
I've now concluded the debate, and
Mr Mayor,
reply, and so
could I ask the
don't want to hear
mover
any more.
Mr Mayor, could I ask the mover, because it's a little bit confusing, because I know Councillor Filipaina amended, made an amendment, but in terms of C, there is a reference on Maori seats for Auckland Council, and really it should be Maori seats on the governing body of Auckland Council. or even elected Maori seats for the governing body, or even elected Maori seats for Auckland Council, but I think the word governing body must go in there to at least give some clarity to the public.
If you do that, it'll be only on the governing body and they won't go on the other committees. So I think we'll just leave it. We're on the council. When you're on the council, you get onto the governing body and you get invited by the mayor to go on some other councils, committees. So I think if, you know, I'd like to get home today. Can I move that we can get home today? Theoretically, this was responded to by Councillor Filipino, who's a stickler for the rules, and I support him for that. And so it's over. We're putting the damn thing. And I'm going to put it in 3A, B and C. I'm going to put the motion for A. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary?
Aye.
Who is to the contrary? Oh, sorry, there was a late aye. Okay, so that is carried. I'm going to now put option B, and is there a call for a division? There is a call for a division on option B. Okay, and I will ask Sandra with an R to carry out the division on option B. And we'll start. You'll carry this out. This is not my job to do it.
Councillors, you're voting on clause B as you see it in front of you. Councillor Baker.
No.
Councillor Bartley.
For.
Councillor Dalton.
For.
Councillor Darby.
For.
Councillor Ferry.
For.
Councillor Filipina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
No.
Councillor Foley.
For.
Councillor Henderson.
Aye.
Councillor Hills.
Aye.
Councillor Lee.
No.
Councillor Leone.
For.
Councillor Newman.
No.
Councillor Sayers.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Stewart.
No.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Walker. Councillor Watson. Councillor Williamson. Mayor Brown.
No.
So that is lost. 12 votes to 9.
So go back up there. What are we looking at now?
So can we put clause C?
Well, clause C, all those in favour? Against?
Aye.
No, carried. Okay, so we've now got a situation whereby is the meeting prepared to allow me to put the original B?
Just put it, just move it.
To mo-
You have to make a decision, so you need to.
I am going to move the original B and see if we can get that one, and it is being seconded by Councillor Turner. And the original B has been lost by the person fiddling around with the computer. Where are we? B, approve the consultation for material for seats. All those in favour of that one, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary?
Against.
Okay, recorded by Councillor Filipino, who's not happy with that, that's okay. Overall, things carried, and it seems as though...
Against for me too, please.
Who is that?
Councillor
Dalton, okay,
Councillor Dalton.
That's noted.
yep.
And Ferry.
And Bartley.
And Foley.
You probably win it now. I'm sorry to laugh, I'm not taking it seriously. That's carried. Thank you. Now,
Me too, Sandra.
I'm going to take a huge risk now, but at least we're getting on with this. The item 11 is not contentious, and we might be able to get away and have lunch, and we'll return afterwards for the secret piece. It's been moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by the former Mayor, Councillor Fletcher. All those in favour of saying that accepting the recommendation to receive item 11, please say aye. To the contrary, carried. There's no extraordinary business. I'm going to accept a motion that we move into secrecy, and then I'm going to abandon it. Moved by
Councillor Walker.
Councillor Walker Fletcher. All those in favour of moving into secrecy, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. I'm now stopping the meeting, and we are going to resume at 2:30 in secret.